Hi everybody, welcome back inside the CrossFit Update Studios as we continue to wrap up the 2018 Reebok CrossFit Games. I'm Sean Woodland with Rory McKernan and Tommy Marquez, and today we're looking at the women's side of things, and we certainly did not have the final event drama that we have become accustomed to in that competition, but there were still plenty of exciting moments on that side of the house.
Yeah, we didn't. You're right. It didn't come down to the final event, but it was still equally thrilling for me the entire weekend, what was going on in the women's competition. I was shocked, surprised, happy, and it couldn't have really gone better in my opinion.
Yeah, I still feel just as emboldened about the future of the women's competition and looking forward to next year as I was last year with that last event drama. And I think maybe even more so given some of the performances that we saw this week.
Let's revisit the top five where Tia-Clair Toomey wins her second straight CrossFit Games championship as she beats Laura Horvath, who finishes second. More on her in a second. Catherine Davidsdottir back on the podium as she takes third, and then Cara Saunders and Annie Thorisdottir rounding out the top five. But first, Tia Toomey is kind of taking a page out of Matt Fraser's book here. As she's a champion, but she continues to get better, and she was really impressive those 4 days in Madison.
The arc of Tia Toomey, as far as we've seen her come in this sport, for me is truly, truly mind-blowing, and I loved it. The first year that we ever saw her, I met her at the Invitational. And during an interview, I had to beg her to say the words, "I am the fittest on earth." She was meek, she was a little bit embarrassed, she was shy. And this year in the competition, not only did she win, but she wasn't waiting at the end like you mentioned, Sean. She blew the competition away. She went out there to win, and it's not the largest points margin we've ever seen, but you see her flexing after her CrossFit total, and you see her completely owning all of her victories. And even in her championships acceptance speech versus last year, she can't even speak because she's in tears. She's surprised that she's the name that's called this year. She looked like she owned it. She looked like she wanted more, and she looked like she'll be back again.
Yeah, it's crazy you have that story. I have a similar one. I did an interview with her here in the studio. Chris Hinshaw was there as well, and during that interview she said, "I want to be the fittest on earth." And when I looked over at Hinshaw and the rest of her crew, they looked like they had seen a ghost because they told me that she had never actually verbalized that before, so it was a big step for her. And now we're seeing that manifest over time with the fact that she wore the white leaders jersey for 10 events this year. That ties her record from last year, and there was so much different this year. It felt like she knew she was in the lead. She wasn't just trying to prove that she could get over the hump. This time it looked like she felt like she was the fittest woman on earth, and now she was just showing it to the rest of the world for a second straight year.
You mentioned the white leaders jersey, and in order for her to get that, she had to take it off the back of Laura Horvath, the rookie out of Hungary. And I know we're going to be talking about this woman for a long time, but to me, she was probably the biggest story of the games just because that women's field is so deep, and we really haven't seen anybody kind of get in there with the usual suspects. And now a 21-year-old kid out of Hungary looks to be, I guess, one of the big contenders now as we move forward.
Without a doubt, for me. You said that we're going to be talking about her for a long time. Literally, the only thing I wrote on this piece of paper was the future. This woman, and her ability to come out, be completely unencumbered by the fact that she was in the field with past champions and people who were the names that were in the conversation leading into it. I saw her literally on events break some of those women mentally, and to me that was more impressive than the fact that she actually had the event wins and her performance throughout the course of the weekend. But yeah, she was the story of the weekend as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, she wore the white leaders jersey for 3 events. She won 3 events as a rookie. Both of those are phenomenal. And touching on what you said about her breaking some of the athletes, I thought she did that in the final day, and she sent a clear message to the rest of the women's field for the future. It started with the 2-stroke pull, and an event that's almost custom tailored for Katrin, the sled dog mentality. Katrin comes up to a huge lead. Laura tracks her down in the final round. Katrin takes a slight lead off the bike. Laura, unfazed, just passes her on the transition and just calmly pulls the sled to victory. And that same day to close out the weekend, she's obviously going to get second. It's going to be tough to take over Tia Toomey. But in that final yoke walk, you could see Tia really wanted that finish that she missed out on last year in terms of shutting the door and stamping it with a strong finish. Laura, unfazed by it, just walks right by her as Tia struggles on the yoke, takes another event, and clearly let everyone know, hey, I may not have gotten it this year, but watch out in 2019.
I thought she was going to walk the yoke onto the podium. It looked like she was just going to keep going and step up.
When you look at spots 3 through 5, I mean, those are the women who we expected to be battling with Tia Toomey for the top of the leaderboard. Cara Saunders, Catherine Davidsdottir in third, and then Annie Thorisdottir. What stood out to you about those 3?
with the fact that they were there, right? We did, those were the names that we thought were going to be in the competition. I'd venture to guess that anybody who played Reebok Pick'em had some variation of those 4 names. If we're talking about both Katrin, Annie, and both of the Australians, were going to be in their top 5 in some way, shape, or form, and one of them would probably be their champion that they named. So just the fact that they were there, but then what they didn't do good at as well, that stood out for me. You know, I would have told you going into the competition if I knew the events that 30 muscle-ups per time backed up with a max deadlift wouldn't be great for Katrin. I was surprised by how well she didn't do on the CrossFit Total though, however. And then Annie, Thor's daughter, actually released some information that she, during the during Chaos, she had something that I never knew about.
Yeah, she had a heart arrhythmia that apparently she's had since she was a teenager, and it's something that has popped up in training in the past, but never during competition, so it was kind of a little bit of a gray area for her, in an event that was all gray area for everyone in that Chaos event. But I think there were bits and pieces for each one of these athletes to kind of circle and hang their hat on. Katrin looked like she had that competitive fire that she had in the previous years. Obviously, there's still some holes and things to work on. Cara, another strong performance. Inside the top 5, just missed out on a podium, but it was well within her reach. Annie, if there was any questions about her ability to come back and replicate the success that she did last year, even so far into her career, still being young though, I think she should take this top 5 with pride because it was the deepest field that we've ever seen for the women.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say another big story for the women is the fact that Sarah Sigmundsdottir has to withdraw. What does this mean for her now moving forward? Because every year it seems like, okay, she's got to change this, she's got to change that, and we think that now she's finally gotten things corrected, but how does an injury now affect that?
I'm really interested to see her statements after the games now are finished. One thing that it tells me, there's still a bit of a rumor mill about how these things happen. I heard that she came into the event with prior injury, which that speaks volumes again, just to her grit and her ability to kind of push forward and crush it even on the CrossFit Total. I keep saying, like, imagine having something wrong with your ribs or your lungs while you're trying to push weight over your head or you're trying to pull weight off the ground or squat. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what she does because like you said, Sean, she's made a lot of moves and none of it ever had to do with her physical capacity. She showed up on the scene and she dominated her very first year. It's not about physical capacity. I wonder if she can get it together and come back and claim the place that she really deserves.
Yeah, and this injury, I'm not sure if it's the exact same thing, but she was dealing with a rib injury to start the season. In December, she had to take 8 weeks off before going into the Open and basically starting the year fresh. And then obviously a similar injury with the rib, takes her out of the games this year. But the beyond that, and I'll be honest and frank here, that it never seemed like Sarah was the same, same athlete that she had been in years past. One thing that always stood out to me about Sarah is regardless of what was going on, she competed with a level of joy that seemed authentic and seemed to kind of drive her in those tough moments. I didn't see that this year. She was a little bit more closed off, a little bit more seemingly too focused and too intent on being that serious competitor. And I don't know if that's who she is, not just as an athlete, but as a person. So maybe something was wrong from the get-go, but it just didn't feel like the Sarah of old this year.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing Sarah Sigmundsdottir get back in action and hope that she recovers from that and is able to get herself back in contention so we can start talking about her being healthy and doing what we are used to seeing Sarah Sigmundsdottir do. Let's turn our attention now to the United States because all the athletes we've talked about are from outside of the U.S., but you have Carrie Pearson 6th, Brooke Wells in 8th, Aramo in 9th, and Cassidy LANCE-MCWHERTER in 10th. Are any of these women going to insert themselves into that conversation about people who can take the crown from Tia Toomey?
I think that the problem for most of them was a slow start, but I was surprised to have a discussion with Cassidy Lance after her performance in the marathon row, to where she said, "No excuses. That's just not my jam. I'm not good at it, and it could not have been a worse event for me." All the odds were in her favor in terms of the Open win, the regional win, and she seemed to be in the best shape of her life. But I certainly think she can hang with these women. Whether or not she can button up a championship, if she's got holes that are that big, I say no. Kari Pierce, Christy Aramo, I think they did fantastic. They just got up to such a slow start. I don't think that you can afford that in this competitive of a field.
Obviously, a top 10 finish is fantastic for all of those 4 women. But if we're talking about trying to take the crown off of Tia-Clair Toomey, I'll be blunt and say I don't think any of them can do it right now. You look at some of the holes and things in their fitness that have perpetually plagued them. those are things that if they haven't necessarily completely shored them up by now, it's going to be hard to really close that gap on an athlete like Tia Toomey, who just seems to be getting better each and every year with fewer and fewer weaknesses. Each one of them had, moments where they did exceptional, whether it was Carrie Pierce and some of the gymnastic stuff on the muscle-ups and the handstand walk, Eremo on the swim event, CASSIDY LANCE-MCWHERTER did great on the clean and jerk speed ladder, but they still just have a couple of those bad finishes that just you can't have if you want to be at the top of the sport, especially on the women's side.
Yeah, with that being said, it's a little early, but we're going to do it anyway. We'll look ahead to 2019. Just sort of broad brushstroke it here. What do you expect to see? Is it going to be the usual suspects again, or are we going to have some surprises possibly?
I think it's fun to see a new name in terms of the rookie Hungarian coming into the field, but I have no reason to believe after these performances this year that we're not going to see the usual suspects. It was really interesting to me to hear Cara Saunders' interview after she performed so well in the bicouplets, and she was like, I'm getting older. I've been doing this game for a long time, and when you have to shift things around. So even though that may be true, a top 5 finish and all the women that finished within the top 5 gave me no reason to pause, and including Amy Thorisdottir, who I was one of the people who was like, oh man, she's been doing this thing since 2009. I'm not sure if she can keep it up. I think that even she continues to dominate, but the presence of Laura Horvath does tell me, give me some hope, because I love to see new names and new faces, that they will be pushed and they will have to work for it.
I think the Cara's mentality of maybe starting to shift gears and looks toward other, family aspects, whether it's, starting a family or anything like that, maybe the only thing that's stopping from this top 5, top 6 from maybe repeating, because you look at the podium this year, the ages of them are 24, 21, 24. 3 podium athletes underneath the age of 25, and they're really just starting to get their legs underneath them, I feel like. So it's something that we could see these battles play out for the next 5 to 6 years, 10 years if Laura stays in it.
Not to mention a healthy Sam Briggs comes back from Masters competition.
That's true. Let's talk about top moments really fast. Ro, we'll start with you.
I've been talking a lot about grit. I've been talking about big comebacks, and even though this wasn't the spirit of the games moment, this for me shows the spirit of an athlete, and that was Alessandra Pacelli when halfway through a marathon row. So to be clear, 21,000 down, 21,000 to go, she starts having cramps. And she told me they radiated around her body. So it'd be ab, and then it would go out to the arm, and then it would go down to the forearm. And you can only imagine what you would do. Put yourself in her shoes. There's no comfortable situation. There's no way that you can make yourself not feel this pain. And still, she gritted out the rest of the 21,000 meters. And to me, it's one of the coolest things I saw, and just it shows you what these athletes are capable of mentally, to sit there and grind through that and not even get time capped, to just to still pull through.
One of the gutsiest performance I think I've ever seen on the female side of things. My top moment comes from the same event as well, but from the athlete that won it, in Margot Alvarez. Her marathon performance was just phenomenal. It was the fastest marathon row done by a woman so far this season. In the World Indoor Rowing Championships back in February, it would have won for her for the women's open division as well. It's it's the second fastest marathon rowed in the last 2 seasons. So just not just a good performance for a CrossFit athlete, but a good performance across the board. And to me, it was very symbolic of how her career has been. It's just a long kind of grind and slowly working her way towards the top. That's what she's done. She hasn't been flashy, hasn't necessarily been one of those athletes that always is in the top 10, but she keeps working, and finally got a big payoff with that event.
And she prepares herself well. This is a test of preparation. I saw her the night before, and she's like, well, Sam Briggs does this every Christmas, so I've given it a shot a couple times. She's the only athlete who I knew who said, oh yeah, I've tried a marathon before.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
I think my biggest moment was the final heat of the speed, clean, and jerk ladder when CASSIDY LANCE-MCWHERTER was the last woman on the floor. Wasn't going to improve her positioning. She had 5th place locked up. She made one go at the final weight, didn't hit it, and then was going to say, I'm done. And then
you even called it. You were like,
Tia Toomey, I was like, all right, she's done. She's going to take 5th. And then Tia Toomey and everybody else says, no, you get back out there and you do it. And she hit it, and the crowd went bananas, and it was awesome. And she had no reason to make that lift. Didn't help herself out, but that to me that's the CrossFit spirit. You finish. It doesn't matter how long or
cool.
it takes you, but you get across the finish line. That's it for us for today. But before we go, I want to remind you that registration for the team series is live now. The first workouts get announced on September 19th. Roe is available to be your partner.
I saw a great, Elliot Simmons posted a picture of Jamie Green sleeping on the airplane back, but it was already registered for the team series. So
that's great. So you
You
have
have no
all kinds of
excuse.
fun like that. Yeah, again, registration live, games.crossfit.com. That's it for us. Back tomorrow to break down the team's side of the house for Tommy Marquez and Rory McKernan. I'm Sean Woodland. We'll see you then.